To be perfectly honest, this is actually one of my favorite chapters of the series so far. This was just a really good setup of matches, and I really liked Irie's like whole performance. I thought she was really good, and I'm trying to figure out some of the guys' powers, some of the bad dudes' powers that showed up at the school, and I kind of think it's funny just because it fits right in that Tsumugi is gonna show up late because she's just late to school. Like every single time we like see her on her like her regular school day, she's just always getting distracted and showing up like either late or like rushing to school. So she's got like a Saitama thing going on. She's just taking forever to get to the to like the events that are actually going on in the story. But these guys are all actually all pretty cool, and there was a whole thing here I actually really liked, and it was definitely my favorite part of the chapter, and that was that the bad guys, and I really wish we had a name for their group, like whatever they called themselves, so I could just refer to them that, because right now they're just the bad guys. But these three dudes, one of them being the gum kind of like spiderweb dude, and then two other dudes. One of them being the guy that kind of looks like Yuji from Jujutsu Kaisen, and I thought that was just funny on the train. And then the last chapter was like, oh, we see him up close at the very end, and he doesn't look as much like Yuji as he did on the in that first panel he's in. But then it's like this chapter, and he's fighting with powers just pretty much the same as his. I actually really like that. I can't tell if he's a reference or coincidence, because he doesn't act like Yuji, but it's pretty good so far. I have been enjoying how the fights work, and how the whole bad guys now have this, like they've gotten the Confado thing, the thing that buffs up regular people. Because so far, sweet users are the only people in the series that have powers, and they all seem to have like a general, that kind of like increased speed, strength, and durability. Everyone in that that seems to have a sweet user power just seems to have a degree of that. I don't think any of them have really seemed weak at all in reality. Like even the weakest guy, like the macaroon guy, was like bodying regular humans. So they got the whole thing that buffs up regular people. So now they're super buffed. And we see it in the first part when they come in, and I can't tell what the two guys' powers are for sure, or like whatever their food is for their sweet user power. And there was a comment at the start of the chapter when Tsumugi is talking to the old shop owner and saying how that melon pan is bread, and Tsumugi's saying that's debatable. I feel like she was trying to say it's more like a dessert, and I was like, okay, well, does that mean that one of the guys, like one of the bad dudes, is gonna have that as a power? Like maybe just in the chapter being coincidence, then leading into whatever the, whatever the dude's gonna display. In this case of the series is about people with like weird food combat abilities, and I was like, oh, melon bread, okay, because ice cream and popcorn aren't really sweets. They're, I guess there's like a weird vague category that certain things get to fit in. I'm really curious as to like what the extent of the powers are. But I guess in reality, like whoever did this, like whoever created the candies that gave the sweet users their powers, he could do with other foods. That's definitely like a big mystery in the story that hasn't gotten touched yet. And I do hope that the series doesn't get axed and we can get to like the mysteries in the series like that, because it is a really weird concept of this dude who pretty much at some point, I don't know if it's like one specific guy or the company, but it's pretty much like they just gave out superpowers to people all over this, like the area, like all over the city, and so now you have all these people that just have all these superpowers because of like a company. It's just a really weird concept of the like the base set, but the whole mystery in that hasn't been touched at all. So I am open to see how Volume 1 ends up selling. We haven't gotten the volume cover yet, so I don't know if there's any. I don't think there's a date for Volume 1's sale. I think it's just probably like a general estimation. We should probably see it, I would imagine, within the next couple weeks, because we're already at Chapter 12. And if it sells well, then maybe the series will keep going. I don't know what the bare minimum kind of area is for sales. I think the only time that they act stuff before like sales returns is if it, I don't know if something's going on behind the scenes or some weird like editorial decision. Outside of that, the whole setup from this chapter, it was really cool because it felt like a classic shonen. Oh, everyone group up with their enemy opponent kind of matchup. I love those. That's, again, that there are tropes that are pretty much always fun, and stuff like this is just very shonen. Everyone's getting split up specifically into their parts, and we're gonna have, you got you have Misaki, which is really fun. I'm gonna talk about him in a minute. His whole setup is really hilarious, and I'm hoping that something good comes to his character, because I do like him so far. And there was the piece of information that in the original idea, he was also going to be a sweet user, but he's not in the series, so maybe he's going to become one later. He might be one of those characters that starts out really goofy and weak, and then ends up becoming really powerful. A good example is Kanshime from Zatch Bell. And I remember there's a dude, Kabuto from Siren, was a similar way. He started out kind of like a little bit comedic, but ended up getting like really powerful like near the end. We could get that with Misaki. I don't know. I would love to see whatever the author would have in mind how to use combatively cookies, because his whole original thing, I think, was like a chocolate chip cookie power. So it's just like the weird ways this guy uses foods for powers is really cool. And that's the creativity is one of the things I do like about the series a lot. Like the cool dude with the flicking popcorn kernels that are like grenades, and then like he had like a whole wrapping of kernels around his stomach like a suicide vest. I was like, man, this is really interestingly cool. And it was really fun. It gave me a Lucky Toriko vibe, and I think that's one of the things I like about it. But I mentioned I really liked Irie. I think her character is pretty fun. She's very likable so far, and she's pretty reasonable. The whole part with Tsumugi, when Irie realized like you can't be the guy. It doesn't matter if we've never had a sweet user or a sweet have two people, like two sweet users of the same food. She just completely ignored that. It's like, it doesn't really matter because there's no way that you could be that guy if you're this powerful. Because clearly we saw in the last chapter, Tsumugi's, or was it the last chapter or was it chapter 10? I don't know. Tsumugi's biggest lollipop was like her max power that we've seen so far. What seemed like her upper power was like maybe one of the lollipops that was dropped at that like big cataclysm that happened in Tokyo. Because that was obviously all over the whole city versus one. Massive gap in strength. I like Irie's is pretty, like, she's got a pretty likable character, and I liked her whole display in this chapter a lot. Because you had the bad guys split up, and there was a really weird paneling with the response and expression on the teacher's face when he's like going to scold these dudes, thinking that they're some like delinquents at school causing trouble, but he's like, oh, you guys aren't from this school, and then he just has this weird look on his face like he had seen a ghost. I was like, what was the response that he was going for? I would have just been like, oh, you guys don't go to school, what are you doing here? Like, what's the problem? This guy just beating him. He seems pretty odd too, because he's like touching people's hair. It seems like a real goofball, but anyway, like, they just pretty much body him, and he seems like just a regular guy, and all these guys have powers, so they completely just... I would love to see, like, the comparison, like, a base strength feat from this guy to see what the transfer of strength was, like, smashing this guy. Like, could he pick up a car? Is he just completely bodying this dude, and he's gonna, like, barely be alive after this? Or is he just gonna be kind of beat up? I don't know. And... that's when Irie notices that these guys are outside, and you see one of them eating one of the confeito, and he throws, I don't know if it's supposed to be the melon pan bread that was mentioned at the start of chapters, one of the things I brought up, or it's like a mint or something, because on the outside it kind of looks like a big mint, but I don't think it's supposed to be. I think it might be the melon pan bread they were talking about, because that just makes sense to me. I wasn't really too sure. Otherwise, it was like, I was thinking something like a sweet tart, or just like kind of like a flat disc candy. I don't really know. I feel like the bread makes the most sense, especially looking at like the edges of it. I don't know. Tell me in the comments what your thoughts on exactly are, because they didn't say what their sweet user powers were in this chapter. The only one we got that we already know of is the bubblegum fruit dude. And then Irie ends up going against the dude who looks like Yuji, and because I was saying, even this guy's power, like, it's just this basic his ability coated over his fist, kind of like Yuji's was his divergent fist. It's a very basic looking move with like a good effect. He just uses it very effectively, but it just reminds me of it. It just barely like a layer over his hands. That just seems to be this guy's like kind of regular fighting style. He goes and punches Irie. She's like bleeding, and she had a really cool moment. This is really cool in the chapter. I thought she was pretty badass for this when he's making fun of one of the their group called the Five Stella Etromets of the receipt group. Like, he's already made one bleed, and she's like, "Well, you are too." And he's like, "Oh, whatever. Where is it?" And she's like, "Yeah, oh, your nose," and just like jumps right into his face and smacks him. And she's just like, "Well, you are now, so I guess I'm still kind of right." I thought that part was pretty good because it was like, oh, she's having like a good back and forth with this dude, and then the other two dudes show up and end up like smacking her all the way out of the building and into a tree. So they're doing some unfair group fighting right now. And then Misaki, like, he ends up going against the Yuji dude, and I really like where his character is at right now because it's both funny. And it sets a good area for his character to be bigger in the future. Because he reminds me of Seki from Black Clover. But he doesn't seem to be as... Well, at least right now. I would imagine he's going to be a lot more serious of his character. Just given that he seems to have a... Kind of like... He's pretty much got the male lead spot. Like, Tsumugi's the main character. Just based off of where we were at with... like with Misaki at the start of the series, and he keeps being involved. He's way more frequently involved than someone like Seki was. But he has the thing where Seki, or also like King from One Punch Man. Like, they're always getting high like levels of kind of like cred and praise from things that they didn't actually do, but they end up getting credited for, or just. And then they're kind of like rising in the ranks because we already have, oh yeah, he's defeated 2 sweet users. It's kind of like how Seki would just kind of get really lucky and that would get him promoted, and how King would get kind of the credit for stuff Saitama did. So he has more of a like a potential, I'm hoping at least, to become like a really good character. But Tsumugi, I'm guessing, is gonna fight the gum guy. And we're going to have whatever, like this melon bread or whatever it's supposed to be, guy against Irie, and then Misaki against the Yuji looking guy. Because I don't think either of them have gotten names yet. I don't think either of them had their names mentioned. And this guy just seems to be like a heavy hitter. It doesn't seem like, at least so far, that his power does anything specific. But he just ate the Confedo, so I'm guessing that he's not at full power at least. But the thing is, with Misaki, he's not really powerful, at least right now. He didn't eat one of the Confedo, I don't think, but I don't really know if he's capable of winning any of these fights right now. It's going to be really difficult. I feel like he's going to have to get like a really tricky win, like if he outsmarts this dude somehow. Like if he can, I don't know, maybe figure out a way to, I don't know, lure into the science lab and do some experiments or something, make some chemicals. I don't know. Other than that, I feel like Tsumugi is going to have 2 fights or something, or it's going to be Irie against both the other 2 guys. I don't really know, but I'm really hoping Misaki gets to do something, because I do have hopes for his character. I like where it starts. I think he's kind of goofy, but I'm rooting for him as well. He's a enjoyable character, at least at the moment. And then Tsumugi is just getting to school. I'm hoping it isn't going to be a one-on-one fight for each of these guys, because I don't want it just to be focused on anybody kind of like too long, just given like the idea of like too much content for the events going around. Like we end up just getting like 4 chapters of either Irie or Tsumugi fighting people, because maybe I think the best way to do it is like a quick fight with one of them, and then maybe Tsumugi fights the gum guy, and then Irie fights the bread dude. I don't really know. It's a weird setup if Misaki doesn't get up and actually get a fight. I'm really hoping he does. But either way, these guys, so far are pretty confident antagonists. They're threatening. Like, they immediately threw one of their powers into a school that like gouged out multiple floors. Like, these guys are like borderline terrorists going on right now. Like, they're a movie clip away from being like an international problem if they're casually just attacking teenagers at school. Like, imagine if Irie didn't do anything about it. That, like, you could have had easily like 100 people dead, maybe more. These guys already have like zero morality. Like, they're kind of odd right now, unless they knew that she was gonna do something, which I don't think that they expect her to immediately respond. Either way, the fights are going on right now. They seem pretty cool. Like, buffed up, the one dude that looks like Yuji. I wish we can get a name for him, because the easiest way for me just to say is like, yeah, the guy who kind of looks like Yuji. He says he's not feeling any pain for like after consuming the Confedo, so I don't really know if Misaki can do anything. Like, it's a really odd situation they have going on there. He could surprise me. Maybe he'll eat multiple Confedo and get like buffed really strong for like 3 seconds and win. Either way, Tsumugi needs to definitely have like a good display chapter. Like, I think we've had her like destroy a lot of like the fodder guys, but I would like to see her actually in a scenario where she's got to like fight and use her powers like really quickly and on the spot. I don't really know. Like, we'll see. I think it's going to be one of those paces which is going to really depend on how the first volume does. Like, if they get to a point where, oh, you're good, continue, keep going at your own pace, like, sales are good. Or if it's like, oh no, sales are bad, just kind of rush the ending kind of scenario. I don't really know. We'll have to just wait and see the next couple weeks. I'm looking forward to the fights. Like I said, I enjoy the series. I think it's pretty good, and I have fun reading it, and I look forward to it every week. I really like the dude's creativity with the food powers and everything that he's just been doing with the characters. I really appreciate everyone for calling below. Tell me your thoughts are about the series, and thank you all for listening. Bye.